Hello students, I'm back with a new explanatory video on Alexander Pope's essay on man. As you all know, we shall be beginning with the introduction of Pope, his age, and the circumstances and the kind of poetry which he used to write. Pope lived during the neoclassical period, and he was a satirist. He was let's begin with the introduction with the first slide. Alexander Pope was born on May 22nd, 1688, and he began writing poetry at the age of 12. And he was a very deformed kind of in physical appearance, as you can read that he was hardly 4 feet tall because he had contracted tuberculosis of the spine. His spinal cord was not working. It had a tuberculosis, kind of a tumor on it, so he couldn't grow in height well. He died in 1744. Alexander Pope has given us many classics. He has written Essay on Man to justify the ways of God to man. This Essay on Man is made up of 4 epistles, which we can term in simple terms as parts, and Pope began writing them in 1729. He published it in 1734 anonymously. Anonymously means without giving his name, and later claimed credit for this in 1735. The Essay on Man, this poem, was written during the Enlightenment period, Enlightenment in England, and Enlightenment period means when there was awareness among people. And he became this is a very well-structured and carefully thought poem, and it has its own history. Here, in this poem, he refers to the Enlightenment era, which was the age of the age of reason and science. People had started questioning God, his origin, his existence. And the philosophers of that time, they had rejected the idea of the Middle Ages and Renaissance. So, in this way, this poem, it synthesizes the key ideas that took place in the 18th century. Now, the focus was entirely on the power of mind, that means reasoning, nature, jo kudrat thi, and society, what was happening all around. Social classes and society, class divisions were now important for each one of them. Now, the style of the poem, the Pope has used iambic pentameter in this poem, and it does not necessarily rhyme. So, Pope rhymes his lines in the couplets. Couplet means 2 लाइनों में rhyming करता है, but in the larger sense, it does not rhyme. And reading the poem with the correct rhythm will help you in reading with speed and understanding. Now, I have given you here in this slide some examples of iambic pentameter and couplets. Each line consists of 5 beats. Pentameter means 5 beats and 10 syllables. When reading, every other syllable is emphasized. So what can we reason but from what we know? So this is the example. Now, when I come back to the explanation of this poem, something very important I would like you to understand is that in the poem, man is, Pope brings out the gist or the summary or the crux of the poem is that man is fated to be born. And why is he born? To do something not very useful for the universe and die. Now the section 1 and 2 of the poem are author's contemplation, thoughts on the nature of human being and recognition of the existence of God. Here, the poem functions constantly and uninterruptedly and will do, he says, that we need to work unconditionally, uninterruptedly, in accordance to the natural laws. He says a human is somewhere below the angels, but above animals and plants. Now I'm giving you the theme. He explains the theme of the poem by being one of the enlightened man himself, explaining that God and the nature of creation to man, that man has again been made by God. And different creatures have their own kind of communication, which is unfamiliar to humanity. Like we all understand that, or we believe that animals have their own way of expressing their thoughts and feelings, even to a larger extent, plants. Now, in the third section describes another important issue, that is, the happiest person is who is completely ignorant of his or her future. That is, the book of fate is completely in the hands of God, and you are happy if you do not bother about it, and if you leave the cord of your fate, apni jinu Punjabi ch kahida dori Rab de hath chhad deo, you are the most happiest person on earth. Section 4 asserts that the greatest sin of any human being is pride, command. And we should not have this pride against our Creator, because our Creator knows everything, and we should not hunt for knowledge. We should not start questioning against Him. Section 5 again talks about pride and considers that everything was created for our use, and we are the center of everything since the ancient time, and his understanding of the world changes with the boundaries. Now here Pope is an angry man. And says that man has destroyed life without care, which we have done to a larger extent if we look around our nature. And yet man gets angry at God for the same thing. And he says, God, you have created illness, floods, volcanoes, venomous insects like snakes, caterpillars. So he says it is not our business to know. So we should not blame God for such things. Section 6 tells that people always complain against heaven. That is providence, that is for God. But this is an attainment of eternal life given by God, and we should not doubt Him. In fact, the concept of doubt which comes into our mind is our enemy. And it is better that we do not know our future. We leave everything into the hands of God. Section 7 talks about the great chain of being, that throughout the world or throughout the earth, we are made up in a hierarchy. And at the bottom of the chain is earth and minerals, followed by plants and animals, and among them we are at the top. So a human is above all but inferior to angels and God. God is superior and everything and everyone mentioned. So again he reasserts, stresses Pope that the great chain of thing is perfect and God is at the top. And if we go against God, if we become egoist, if we become full of pride, full of hatred for God, then we are in for a bad time, because the established order of God cannot be challenged, and we are in there for destruction. Our pride allows us to think this way, Otherwise, we should not and cannot go against God. Now, in the end, he requests all of us to maintain the divine order. He encourages us to submit before God, and the submission before God would be our obedience. If we do not submit before God, this could be disobedience, which would have fatal results. So, we should be always we should kneel down and be always in obedience before our Creator. So Pope defines that our task is to accept our medium position in the great chain of beings. And in the last lines on the poem would be that the word which he says is, whatever is right, which means whatever God has decided for us, bestowed us with, is always perfect. So you could have, from next time onwards, you can always, note down the extra points and the simple explanatory words which I speak along with the slides and in the video. For any doubts, you may write or leave your messages in the comment section, and like and subscribe the channel. I shall be back with more videos. Thank you.